Yes, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. I welcome back to yet another live broadcast. Unfortunately, once again, we're coming a bit late. It was one of those long nights, really. It was one of those long nights. But it's always good to be back. It's always good to be back. So, anyways, it's always good to be back. So, we're going to be speaking about the updates from the FIFA Club World Cup. We'll talk about transfer speculation. We'll talk about all the things that have caught your attention and perhaps a little more in the last, 7 8 hours over the course of the night. And for those for who it is day, I'm sure it will be in a similar strength or a similar context. But so many things are making the rounds. So many things are making the rounds. You wouldn't even imagine or believe what is happening in some sections. Anyways, we'll be talking about that. Liverpool have entered the race to try and sign Victor Gyökeres. That's as per the reports that we are getting this morning. Liverpool have joined the race to sign Victor Gyökeres. So, I mean, that's in itself quite telling. That in itself is quite telling. How concrete those reports are, we're going to find out a little very soon. But sorry, was having our audios tested so that we are sure everything does check out, and because we did have echoes in one or two of our broadcasts, I continue to do what? Make sure that our audios is perfect. So allow me to respond to this. So yeah, that's what we'll be talking about. And without wasting any further ado, let's kick things off at the FIFA Club World Cup, where Mamelodi Sundowns were knocked out or were sent packing following their goalless draw with Fluminense. But then, of course, Borussia Dortmund did win their game, which meant that they advanced to the round of 16. They did win their game by 1-0. That game coming against apologies. Yes. Yes. Borussia Dortmund did win their game by 1-0 against Island Undai. So Stevenson being on target there for Borussia Dortmund in that solo goal that won them the game to ensure that Borussia Dortmund finished at the summit of the group. So that's of Group F. And then Fluminense did finish at the second place team with 5 points. Mamelodi Sundowns fell short because they finished third with just a point. They needed to win their game against Fluminense to ensure that they do advance to the next round. Please, guys, like the broadcast, kindly like the broadcast as we do engage in this debate. But also, leave me a comment. Let me know where you're joining us from at this beautiful morning. Then, of course, in the games that in the other games that were that did come late in the night, that's at around 4 a.m. Inter Milan beat River Plate by 2-0, while Monterrey beat Juarez by 4-0. So pretty much results that we kind of expected, but goals for Inter Milan was scored by Esposito. Yes, Esposito and Bastoni. They were the goal scorers there for Inter Milan as they won that game. So Inter Milan and Monterrey did advance to the round of 16. So that's the update on that side. The Inter Milan and Monterrey did advance to the round of 16. That means River Plate and Juarez were sent home packing. In the larger context of things, those two sides. So sorry, Dortmund will be up against Monterrey Then Fluminense will play Inter Milan at the round of 16 to decide who, progresses to the quarterfinals of the competition. But those are some of the fixtures there. Now, then today we have Group G and Group H. That's Juventus, Man City. Juventus will play Man City, while Wydad Casablanca will play Al Ain. Those games coming at 10 p.m. East African time, while Real Madrid will be up against, I think, Red Bull Salzburg, while Al Hilal and Pachuca will also have a date on their own. Now, here's the catch. If Al Hilal beat up against Pachuca and then Real Madrid beat up against Salzburg, or Salzburg beat up against Real Madrid, then that means that Pachuca and Salzburg go parking. That's if Real Madrid beat up against Salzburg. But if Salzburg beat up against Real Madrid and Al Hilal beat up against Pachuca, that means Salzburg and Al Hilal advance to the round of 16 of the competition. So it's not all yet done and dusted for those two. However, if Real Madrid and Salzburg have their game in a draw, and that means they all finish at 5 points. But then Al Hilal beat up against Pachuca by a goal margin of more than one, then it means they will advance to the quarterfinals to the round of 16 on a better goal difference. So there you have it, guys. In regards to the FIFA Club World Cup. And so that's why we are waiting to see who will play Man City, whether it will be Real Madrid, because if the tables are finished the way they are in Group H and Group G, that means Man City will play Real Madrid, because Real Madrid are leading Group H and Man City are second. And then that means Juventus play Red Bull Salzburg. But if we have a swap of positions, then things will change there. Of course, among the other games, Pyramides have already booked their dates with Botafogo, while Inter Miami of Lionel Messi are going to face PSG. That's the UEFA Champions League winners. I remember Lionel Messi did play for PSG before leaving to join Inter Miami. And then Flamengo are going to play Bayern Munich. And then Benfica will play Chelsea. Those are the other games for the round of 16. Inter Milan will be up against Fluminense. Dortmund will be up against Monterrey. So that's the order of what we do expect in the coming fixtures. Then quickly, let's run away to the transfers, because things have been boiling up, things have been heating up. And today, we do start with our attention starts with Manchester United, who are really advancing towards reaching an agreement with Brentford over the signing of Bryan Mbeumo, the 25-year-old, is keen on joining Manchester United, and it's just a matter of time. We are told that the two parties are now discussing the nitty-gritties of those details of the £60 million offer that with add-ons rising. So they are discussing the details, structure of the deal. How long is it going to be paid? The money going to be paid over? Is it, installments over a period of 3-4 years or even 5 years, depending on what the agreeable terms for Brentford and on the other side? Then it's reported that player terms would be an issue. Earlier reports in this window did suggest that Bryan Mbeumo would demand a salary of anywhere between 230 to 250 grand a week. Sky's main channel. Hi, sir. How are you? How are you doing? Please, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Please like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here. But it's good to have you. So, Manchester United are really close. They want to wrap this deal up before their players return officially for pre-season. They would want Bryan Mbeumo to already be part of their side as players return for pre-season. Like I told you, their pre-season does start on July the 7th. That's the expectation, and I do not think it is going to be much different from many clubs across the Premier League. What country are you from? I'm from Kampala, Uganda. Kampala being the city, Uganda being the country. That's in Africa. Particularly, the region is called East Africa. So, in case you're wondering, but also please do let me know where you're joining us from as well. I'm eager to know what country you're joining us from. Speaking of countries, thank you, Team India. Thank you, UK, USA, Nigeria, and Uganda. Thank you so much for the love and support. Thank you so much, Indonesia. Thank you so much, South Africa. Thank you so much, Nigeria, Kenya, and everyone else from your respective countries where you do join us on every single day here on our respective broadcasts. Zero Rikram says 70 million plus 15 million add-ons from Mbeumo. He will earn 320k a week. I do not think it's going to be that high in terms of wages when you say 320k a week, because Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his Ineos group have decided to sort of be not so extravagant, or not to hand out extravagant contracts. Now, I understand why usually foreign players tend to demand higher wages, because after taxation, which is anywhere between, I think, around 45% of your paycheck that goes to taxes, that after taxes, then your pay is a bit small, and then depending on what the contract terms are, there could be agent fees of up to 10% from what I gather, and things of that regard. So usually foreign players ask for a lot more because of the tax thing, but also clubs are aware of that. But at least because Bryan Mbeumo has apparently been receiving around 40 to 45,000 pounds per week at Brentford. Now, of course, even a huge jump to 200 grand, that in itself is almost a times 5. So it's really, really a significant increase. And then after taxes, it falls down to anywhere around 120 grand if it were 200k, around that region. So I'm not inclined to believe that it will be 320k a week because Sir Jim Ratcliffe has raised his concerns over the contracts of Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, because they are earning, north of 300 grand, and that he thought was poor contract negotiations. At least that's what he signaled in one of his multiple interviews while speaking about Manchester United and their finances and their players being away on loan, saying that their most paid players are not even playing for the club. So, and then 70 million euros, I do not, is it 70 million? Do you mean euros plus 15 add-ons or dollars? I stand to be corrected on that one, but the expectation is that the fee is about 60 million pounds. Now, maybe a little plus. Now, we are not yet sure what the guaranteed fees of that is, and then what comprises of the add-ons. But remember, the first bid that was turned down by Brentford was 45 million pounds of guaranteed fees plus 10 million pounds in expected add-ons. So it could be that the guaranteed fees now rises to maybe 50 or 55 million pounds, and then 5 or 7 or even 8 in expected add-ons. In regards to the fee of 70 million pounds plus 15 million pounds in add-ons, I do not think Bryan Mbeumo on any single day is worth 85 million pounds, as you seem to suggest, Zero Reclam. In any case, they remember when Brentford were starting to negotiate this, their signal to Manchester United was that they value the player at 70 million pounds, and they were using the Matthias Cunha deal as a benchmark. Remember, Manchester United did activate Matthias Cunha's release clause, which was 62.5 million pounds, and then they said they do value the player almost just as much and look at that as the benchmark. So they set their asking price at about 70 million pounds, at least from multiple reports. I'm not saying that's what is cast in stone, but at least from multiple sources. So really, when the fee comes down to that breakdown, I simply kindly understand. So again, with Cunha, we are not sure what the add-ons are because we only knew about the release clause. I'm not certain whether when the player has a release clause, the contract entails add-ons, or it's just about the release clause. I'm not really well versed about the modalities of some of those contracts because, in any case, contracts are even confidential. But we'll find out soon enough at great length what this whole deal is about. But you do come back to say Bryan Mbeumo and Cunha can earn more than 300 grand a week. I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they can't. They obviously can. Any player can. But Manchester United are not going to hand them that much. That's all I'm saying. And you see the advantage for Manchester United in this particular case is that they're signing players from lesser clubs. And remember, lesser clubs, rarely do they even pay north of 100 grand. Now, go to one of the best run clubs in the Premier League, at least financially, that's Tottenham Hotspurs. When you look at their wage structure, they do not have players earning 200 grand a week ever since Hurricane left. They're always within a certain balance. They try to manage their wage structure really, really well. And this happens with teams like Brighton, another very, very well-run club in the English Premier League in terms of finances. So teams like Brentford, who have only been in the Premier League by the way for 4 seasons now, again, players are not earning those, very, very high wages. They're not earning those very, very high wages because the clubs do know they do not make as much as those top teams, but also anytime they could be relegated, and even though there are relegation clauses in these contracts, usually you do not go from earning 160 grand a week, and just because you've been relegated, then you go back to 50 grand, in that kind of structure. But it's not to say that they cannot earn that. Cunha and Mbeumo cannot earn 300 grand a week. I'm simply saying that United under Ineos have said we're not giving those kinds of sizes of contracts. And according to Alex Cook of TalkSport, when this news first came out, he did say that United were willing to pay Bryan Mbeumo at least up to 250 grand a week. Although other reports came out to suggest that it will be about 230 grand a week, for which the difference there would only be 20k. So in this particular case, I sort of understand where Manchester United are coming from. They've learned their lessons when it came to Marcus Rashford having players on high wages. Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Casemiro. If you do go back earlier on in the season or before the last 2-3 months of towards the end of the season, the name Casemiro was among those that Manchester United were highly considering letting go of because he is on very high wages, and yet they thought he wasn't delivering in terms of performance to his very best or to the best of their expectations. Now, the final 2-3 months of the season could have softened or changed Man United's stance, not on the players' wages, but on the players' contribution towards the team. But he's among those players that are really, really highly paid. And one of the reasons he said he would love to stay at Manchester United and see out the remainder of his contract, primarily because he knows around Europe, there's not a single team that is going to come out and sign him and put him on the kinds of wages that Manchester United is paying him. Again, when it comes to transfers, usually it's one of the sticking points. We've seen it with Nico Williams for Premier League teams and Bayern Munich in the pursuit of Nico Williams. We've seen it in the pursuit for Victor Osimhen. We've seen it with teams from AC Milan in their pursuit for Alexander Zinchenko. I mean, usually for majority of those teams, when they are buying players from the English Premier League, the sticking point is oftentimes around wages, because they know English Premier League teams tend to pay higher wages as compared to majority of all the other clubs around Europe, but the giant clubs in certain leagues. For example, when you go to Inter Milan, they may be able to pay up to a certain wage. Teams like Juventus, they can afford certain wages. But even Napoli, it's not really consistent. And they had Victor Osimhen as one of the highly paid players. When you go to the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich is one of those that pay good wages. And yet all the other clubs follow behind the pecking order. When you go to League One, French League One, it's PSG that has the very, very good wages. Their players are on really, really high wages in comparison to all the majority of teams. When you go to the Spanish La Liga, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid are some of those teams that pay really, really high wages. And then Athletic Bilbao, given the manner in which they are run, because they sign local players from within the region, usually they do not spend so much on transfer fees, so they tend to pay their players quite well to keep them around. And so, in that kind of sense, and you say they just did. Clearly, they lied about the finances. And look what happened to Spurs. No pool to get good players when you are fighting relegation and not paying high wages. Now, again, zero. Yes, it could be a factor that maybe Tottenham Hotspur does not get the pool or players that we think, that you and I think it ought to put. But let's not forget, usually, especially in the last couple of seasons, how many times has Tottenham qualified to play in the UEFA Champions League? Ever since they reached the final in 2019, So they're falling off a bit off the wagon. And because of that, the players they attract are players that are okay playing in the Europa League. They do not demand UEFA Champions League football. But also, when you go out to their scouting, usually they are buying players, oftentimes from outside the Premier League, and trying to develop them. When they buy from the Premier League, again, they buy from smaller teams, and those smaller teams usually, we've spoken about their wage structures. And so by the time that player comes to Tottenham Hotspurs, their wage is already going to increase anyway, however small a percentage, but it's going to increase. So I do not think entirely to boil down to the wages. But also, when was the last time you had that Tottenham went and tried to poach a Manchester United star, or a Chelsea top player, or a Liverpool top player, or a Manchester City top player? Usually they've shopped for players like Brennan Johnson. I think that was from what? Was it from Nottingham Forest? So I stand to be corrected on where he was shopped from. But Brennan Johnson, one of those players bought expensively. They went to AFC Bournemouth and bought Dominic Solanke quite expensively, a fee in the region of £65 million, at least according to multiple sources. Then you look at that kind of thing. When they were signing, was it Dejad Spence? That was Ryan Sessegnon. That was from Fulham, I think. So Yubis Bissouma from Brighton and Hove Albion for about £25 million. Again, they are buying from smaller teams to an elevated team like Tottenham, who of course promise wages higher than the teams that they're buying from. Take the example of Arsenal or Manchester United. When they were buying Mason Mount, or Arsenal buying Kai Havertz, you're buying a player from a team like Chelsea who are capable of paying high wages. So the player you're buying is already on high wages. So that means you either match that or even pay a little better to convince them to join you. Rarely do you have players take pay cuts in those kinds of moves, from Chelsea to Arsenal, or from Chelsea to Man United, or from Man City to Arsenal, and that kind of thing. So in the grand scheme of things, you also mentioned, look at what happened. I think you mentioned something to do about lying about finances. I was thinking about this the other day, and I said maybe Manchester United have painted a weaker picture of where they stand financially, yet just so that not be to be priced out or to avoid overpaying for players in the transfer window. While that could be true, but what is not doubtable is the kinds of losses they've incurred in the last couple of years, last couple of 3 seasons, a combined total of about nearly £300 million. So that's not out for contention, because they've been out of the Champions League. Look where they finished in the Premier League. Look at the UEFA Europa League, them not managing to win that. So that takes a toll on your finances, and then all that is exacerbated by the fact that they have these underperforming players that are on high wages. Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford, Casemiro at the time, Anthony. So you look at all those Rasmus Hojlund, Joshua Zirkzee, Matas Delit, Lenio, this Manuel Ugarte. In the grand scheme of things, these are players that were bought either expensively and have been on really high wages, but their performances were not matching that. If United finished 50th, then you know that it gets a good a slightly, maybe a higher amount of money for finishing 50th in the Premier League as compared to finishing 17th, and things of that nature. So all those things do matter, they do count in the grand scheme of things. So while first of all, I'll disagree on the transfer fee, that for Bryan Mbeumo, I do not think it's going to be 70 million pounds. I believe it is going to be around the 60 million pound mark. With some extra add-ons for which even the guaranteed payment could be about 55 or 50 or 57 million pounds, around that region. So then, and then the wages, anything above 200 grand, 250 grand would be an overreach, or would be another mistake financially by Manchester United. Because the other thing in consideration is teams also consider the commercial value of a player. And a player like Bryan Mbeumo, as good as he is, by the way, he's not going to command the same number of shirt sales as, let's say, Marcus Rashford. Never mind that, okay, his situation has gone bitter with United. But look around. Maybe even Bruno Fernandes, you get. So Bryan Mbeumo is not going to get you commercially. He's not going to make that great deal of shirt sales for you to be incentivized to even pay him more. The reason as to why we hear all these big players, or quote-unquote star players, be on high wages is because they also generate just as much income for these clubs. Because when you're a player like Kylian Mbappe, for example, you're joining Real Madrid, and let's say they want to pay you 200 grand a week, you're demanding for 300k a week. One of the justifications you're going to say, look at my social media following. I have maybe a combined total of 40 million followers across my social media platforms. And what does that mean? That every time I post my picture wearing a Madrid jersey, that's club marketing. That's elevating the club's brand. Two, jersey sales. I'm sure more than, let's say, 100,000 fans are going to buy Kylian Mbappe jerseys across the world. Real Madrid fans. So that means that's another contribution commercially to the club as a player, So, and then the fans that are going to be coming in the stadium just watch you. Either you're back at home, or you've gone for these foreign tours, like pre-season and things of that nature. All those matter. All those things count. That's why you get all those contracts have things to do with image rights and things of that nature. You get. So, and then when advertisers come, usually when advertisers come, sometimes they request for specific players to be in their ads, because they request for specific players to be in their ads. The thing is that you're going to say, okay, if I'm going to be, let's say, in an advert for Sportbet, then that's another contribution commercially, because that means the client who is advertising with Real Madrid means they attach a certain value to me being in their commercial, So in that kind of thing. I see it's Bao. Yes, Bao Danish. Yes, sir. I love your program. Please, I'm Bao Danish from North. You said from North Macedonia or from North Korea? Kindly enlighten me from North what? But thank you so much, Bao Danish, there for your comments. Thank you so much for supporting what we do and sparing the time to be with us. So in that context, so when you come and compare it to players like Matthias Cunha, players like Bryan Mbeumo, their commercial value in terms of what they contribute furthermore to the club beyond just the football is also always a factor. When players like Bukayo Saka are negotiating for their contracts, their agents, when they come on table, these are some of the statistics they try to pull out. That look, last season he sold over 400,000, pieces in shirt sales or in jerseys. That's across, the juniors and these men's team kits and things of that nature. Last season, then they go on to the pitch. That last season he scored maybe 10 goals, provided this number of assists. Those are also a factor. Then they go to their social media following. Look, my player is a really a huge star. These are his numbers online. That has a certain commercial value to it, and things of that regard. So all that composition has a contribution to determining what eventually comes out as the player's salary. So while Matthias Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo, by nature of their own football or talents, they could be worth that, I do not think Man United is going to pay them that much. At least that's my personal opinion. But I certainly do respect yours just as much to have a similar opinion. So you also mentioned to do with Acuna that it's a 70 million pound deal. From what we know, it's a 62.5 million pound deal because it was a paid release clause, are going to be paid in a course of 3 installments. Man United had requested to pay it for a longer time, but that's not the case. But then back still on Man United's finances. Manchester United does expect to make player sales, so that means that they're going to have revenues coming in. So, take an example: if Man United were to sell Marcus Rashford for 40 million pounds, 40 million pounds is considered pure profit because he is an academic graduate. Jordan Sancho, he will be considered an academic graduate because he first played for the academy, and he's only 20 and turning 21 soon. So whatever they sell him for is going to be considered pure profit. Of course, players like Rasmus Højlund, they may not generate you as much as you spent on them, so you may take a hit on that. And then, so usually, we all know that they are looking to move on players. So they are also considering that, look, we expect to sell this at maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 players, and the estimated generated revenue out of the total sale for these 3, 4 players is going to be north of 120 million pounds or 150 million pounds. So that balances their books in terms of spending. While they may have told the world that they do not have the money, they could be looking at potential revenue incoming. But also, let's not forget that these transfer fees are not paid in one wholesale. That's why clubs go into negotiations with the other clubs to say, okay, we have agreed on a 75 million pound fee. How do we then pay it? What's the structure? We will pay you 25 million pounds up front, then the other 50 million pounds will come in maybe 3 or 4 installments. That means we're going to pay you in maybe what? About 12.5 million pounds, per year or per season until we complete that. So that's why you have those kinds of structures. For example, Arsenal are going to pay 65 million euros instead of 61 million euros for Martin Zubimendi, just because that negotiation allows them to pay Martin Zubimendi's transfer fee or release clause over installments over a given period of time. So it gives them that bit of flexibility. Because usually clubs do not have this huge chunk of cash lying around to say, okay, we have 300. When they say we have a 300 million pound budget to spend on transfers this summer, it doesn't mean they have all that lying around in the bank, that they're just going to say, okay, Bayer Leverkusen, you asked for 100 million pounds. There you go. You get, we paid for the player, he's now our player. That's not how it works. It usually works in such a manner: you negotiate a fee and then you negotiate paying terms and say, again, the example of Jeremy Frimpong, Liverpool agreed to pay his release clause, 35 million euros. Now, 35 million euros in modern day football is a bit of modest, depending on who you're buying. But Liverpool reached an agreement with Bayer Leverkusen to pay that over a course of 3 installments, and that is a course of 3 years. And for that, they're going to be paying around 15 million euros. Okay, around 10 for maybe slightly over 10 million euros per season. That's about maybe 12 million euros for 2 years, and then the other final year they pay 11 million euros. So you have that kind of Fatrus Ali. Hi, yes, I do remember you, Fatrus Ali. Good to have you back on the podcast. How are you doing, my brother? I hope you're doing okay. I certainly do remember you. It's not your first time being here. So those kinds of negotiations also speak to the financials of these clubs. So they know that we are going to spend maybe 300 million pounds on transfers this summer, but what they may actually end up paying directly during that summer could be 100 million pounds. That means the 200 million pounds has been spread across multiple years going forward to the tune of the length of these players, their contracts. You say I'm exhausted. Okay, that's understandable. I think you're overworking, but I mean, it's part of the hustle, it's part of the grind. Keep it up, but also find ample time for yourself to rest and try and take in lots of fluids. So again, the other example that we can use is Chelsea. Do you know why Chelsea over the last 3 years have been signing players and putting them on 6, 7, 8 year contracts? Why? Because again, they want to spread the payment for those players over the length of their contracts. So, for example, Chelsea comes to Brighton and says, we want Moises Caicedo and we are willing to buy him for 115 million pounds. It's not to say that Chelsea are going to get 100 million pounds and pay it to, to Brighton there and then. So they put Moises Caicedo on what? A 7 year contract. And then they will say, we're going to pay this 115 million pounds over the course of the length of his contract. That is 7 years. So what does that mean? If you're paying 115 million pounds, for example, over a period of 7 years, that means on average, every season you're going to be paying about 16.4 million pounds as transfer fees for Moises Caicedo for a period of 7 years, as opposed to having it paid at once. So that's why clubs have the flexibility with their finances to go ahead and pay like that. I recently got injured playing football. I torn my ACL. Oh, that's quite unfortunate. How did you feel as Monaco signed Paul Pogba? I think this is better for Pogba than it is for Monaco. At least that's what I feel. Usually a player coming off almost a 2 year ban, because remember his ban was effected in the 2023-2024 season. Initially it had been a 4 year ban. He appealed that and it was reduced to 18 months, which is 1.5 years. When you're making a signing of that kind of player who has been on the ban, not actively playing football for the last 2 years, and also a player that is 32 years of age, who has a certain history of injuries, at least, you remember before he was found in breach over the anti-doping rules, he had just returned from injury at Juventus. So it's a bit of a tricky one for AC Monaco. They're literally putting all their hopes and faith that this will work out. But it's a huge gamble for Monaco, but also a very good deal for Paul Pogba, because you get 2 years, you get a 2 year contract, and then you get to play back in competitive football and hope that Didier Deschamps will be watching. And perhaps if you do well to the expectations, or even beyond the expectations, then you earn yourself a slot back into the French national team, because that's his ambition. He wants to get back playing for the French national team, and he wants to play competitive football. Yes, he has been training well. He's been really taking care of himself. He had private trainers, in the US during the course of his ban and things of that nature. But no matter how much you train, and until you're playing physically or a full match, we can never equate the two. Even if you're training 3 hours and the game in itself is just 90 minutes, we can never equate the two. Even if you're playing some Sunday football league and things of that nature. But it is a very, very good move for Paul Pogba. Just to respond to you, Fatrus Ali. How did you feel that Trent and Housen signed for Real Madrid? I think they are good signings. For the last game that Real Madrid won against Pachuca, I think it was by 3. Was it by 3 goals to nil? You had Real Madrid get a red card to Raul Asensio in as early as the 7th minute, and I thought, even though Aurelio Tchouameni pulled a little back to try and help the defense in a centre-back pairing, Dean Housen was quite immaculate in that game. He did really, really well. And let's not forget, he's a youngster. Yes, 3-1. Yes, yeah. So I think for that point of correction. Dean Housen was really, really good in that game. Alexander Trent-Arnold. I do not think he's up there yet, but I think he will be okay. I think he started well. He did struggle in his first game that he did play. That's Alexander Trent-Arnold. I thought they really, really ran at him a good amount of times. That game against Al Hilal, he struggled a bit through it, Alexander Trent-Arnold. But the game against Pachuca, you thought he was much better. I think one of the biggest tests for for Alexander Trent-Arnold is if, let's say, Real Madrid meet Manchester City at the round of 16. That will be a good test for him. But he is trying to sort of fit in at the club, and it will take some bit of time. How did you? Okay, I've responded to that. They still win the Champions League. The Champions League. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what the draws will be like for the pool stages. That's next season. But if you mean the FIFA Club World Cup, then I do give them a chance because I mean they are Real Madrid. Their performances, by their very nature, do not suggest that they could go on to be champions. But when we get to that knockout phase and onwards, anything can happen. What's your prediction on today's Real Madrid match? Today's Real Madrid match. Yes, that game between Salzburg. I think Real Madrid will edge it for all intents and purposes. Now, guys, let's not forget there is a monetary value attached to these games. As much, pretty much the same way the UEFA Champions League is. Every win means about what 2 million euros. Actually, 2.1 million euros, and every draw has about 700 or 750k euros that is attached to it. So there is a motivation there. So my feeling is that Real Madrid beats Red Bull Salzburg maybe by 2-1 or by even 3-1, but maybe 2-1. And then Al Hilal beat up against Pachuca, and then we have Al Hilal and Real Madrid advance from Group H. That's my expectation. But let's wait and see. Those games will come, I think, at around 4 a.m. East African time, and I'm not sure I'll be able to catch them really, because usually those games that kick off at 4 a.m. End towards 6 a.m. and then that means you don't get any hour of sleep before you come and do this broadcast. What do you think? Which team will win FIFA Club World Cup besides Real Madrid? My predictions included Paris Saint-Germain as the champions of Europe. I think they do have a really, really good chance. They have a very, very good team. And never mind that they lost to Botafogo by 1-0 in one of their games. They are one of the contenders for this tournament. I thought Inter Milan could be one of them, although, again, their offerings have not been good enough for me. Their play has not been good enough for me to sort of think that they will go ahead and win it, but they are one of the contenders. I expect a dark horse from South America, one of those teams to sort of surprise us with a very, very good performance. But definitely Bayern Munich is among the other teams that are contenders to win the tournament. Just for the last 77, good morning to you, my brother. Always a pleasure to see you back with us here on the channel. Do you think PSG are gonna hook Inter Miami? Most definitely, most definitely. Of course, the historical context of it that Lionel Messi did play for PSG is a factor, but I do not think it will hold much water to it in essence the way PSG play. I told you guys, PSG purposely want to win this tournament to say we are the champions of Europe and we'll go ahead and win the FIFA Club World Cup. If you look at years gone by, in the ordinary FIFA Club World Cup, usually or majority of times it was won by a team that won the UEFA Champions League. Now, although that tournament or that competition in itself was composed of lesser teams and anything can happen with knockout football, you do think that PSG want to achieve that. And I mean, there will be, the expectation is that they go on and win it anyways, because they are the champions of Europe. So there's a lot of motivation for teams to win this, especially the financial motivation of it, but also the bragging rights. The bragging rights. I mean, Real Madrid want it just as much. I've told you guys before, Florentino Perez apparently promised Real Madrid players winning bonuses of up to 1 million euros should they win this same competition. Now you can imagine what Nasser Al Khelaifi has, promised the PSG players to if they win the tournament, and Al Hilal. Now, I do not think Al Hilal are going to go ahead and win it. Later on, let's wait and see for them to qualify for even the round of 16. But you can imagine the financial promises that have been made to these teams as if should they go ahead and win the tournament. So there's that good motivation. But then Bayern Munich, they want to show we are still a big team in Europe. Why we crashed out of the UEFA Champions League at the quarterfinals at the hands of Inter Milan, we are still a big team, and it is Vincent Kompany still trying to prove himself, So just for the last says, PSG have to be favorites for the Club World Cup because they won the Champions League. I personally hope South American team wins it, so the money doesn't strengthen European teams. That's a good motive. That's a good motive to have. That's a good motive to have. Bye. I have to go, lad. Thank you so much, Patrice Ali, for being with us. You had posed a question about Ronaldo and Messi, but I'll give that opinion in just a bit. So, yeah, actually, for all teams, to answer you just for the laugh, 77, for all the teams that did not get to participate in this tournament, Arsenal, Liverpool, Barcelona, Manchester United, all those teams essentially are looking AC Milan are looking at this tournament and hoping that maybe a strange team wins it, because the winner potentially could walk away with nearly £100 million in revenues, and bonuses. So with that in mind, just imagine Manchester City win the competition with what they've already spent in the transfer window, and then suddenly they have revenues of up to £100 million just from that tournament alone. What kind of flexibility it gives them to maybe even return to the transfer window and make a marquee signing. What that would mean for Real Madrid, what that would mean for a team like Inter Milan, not that PSG need the money because they already have the money, but I mean, it would still be a great deal. So of resources. So because £100 million, I mean, especially knowing that they are going to take a hit in form of a loss on Rando Kolomwani, it most definitely would do him a great deal or in balancing their finances, in balancing their books. So there's that. So anyways, thank you guys for expanding this debate around the transfer of Bryan Mbeumo, Matthias Cunha. Thank you so much, Zero Requiem, for those submissions. Thank you so much, Just for the Laugh, for contributing to this debate, and Patrice Ali. Now, let's again proceed back to the transfers. Guys, let me know what your honest views are about Christian Norgaard to Arsenal. What's your honest opinion? What's your honest view on that transfer? Because it has sort of divided the Arsenal fan base. I've seen lots of mixed reactions, mixed feelings about the transfer itself. Last night, for those of you that managed to be part of us, I did read a comment from I did read a comment from Charles Watts. For the Arsenal fans, I'm sure you know who Charles Watts is. What's up, champ? I'm good, my brother. I'm good, Peter Parker. Good to have you back on the podcast. I'm asking you guys, what's your honest opinion about Arsenal assigning Christian Norgaard as a replacement, as a squad player to replace Thomas Partey, but essentially he's the Jorginho kind of squad member that you're going to get. Because here is what Charles Watts had to say about the transfer itself. He said, far from convincing by Norgaard, he said, far from convinced by Norgaard. Just a personal opinion, obviously, but doesn't feel like Jorginho out, Norgaard in makes the squad stronger. But happy to be proven wrong. Wasn't convinced by Jorginho when he signed either, and he ended up a fine addition. Arsenal have acted quickly, though, to party talks to not reaching an agreement and moved for their Zubimendi backup. No messing around with that one. Did the same with Kepa when Garcia proved impossible. That was his honest opinion in regards to the news of Arsenal making the move for Christian Norgaard. Now, I know. If I'm being honest, from what I've gathered, it's not a popular opinion. Uh, just for the laugh says it doesn't excite anyone. Surely, yeah. Given the kind of profile of player where he is coming from, I mean, he is a good player. Essentially, he is a good player. At the age of 31, he's primarily proven, but right from the onset, you have to commend Arsenal for moving fast. I mean, this is a transfer that they've really acted on really fast in terms of replacing Thomas Partey. As soon as it came to their attention that they are not going to find a deal for them. Two, they get a Premier League proven player. That's credit to them. Now, ideally for me, he wasn't even my suggestion that for those of you that do follow the channel, we've spoken about the possibility of Thomas Partey leaving and who the potential replacements could be. And among them, for me, top on that list would have been Douglas Luiz. Why? He is primarily proven. And then things have not worked for him well out at Juventus. That means they are open to letting him go, So you have that chance to sign him. 27 years of age. He still has 5 good years of top play. He can, he's good at progressing the ball. He does pop up in good places in the final third. He does score you some goals. Christian Norgaard, to be honest, he does something similar. Last season he scored, I think, 4 goals and provided 5 assists, if I'm not mistaken. So he also has that element to him. But Douglas Luiz, for me, meant more sense. And let's not forget, before he left Aston Villa, Arsenal tried to sign him, Douglas Luiz. And while he would have cost them a lot more than what Christian Norgaard is going to cost them, I thought pound for pound, Douglas Luiz would have been a much more sensible option for them to buy. But Christian Norgaard, of course, there's going to be questions whether he fits the Arsenal kind of profile of player. Does he improve them squad-wise? Many fans are not convinced. You say, how come Arsenal can pull the trigger on players that aren't priority but are messing around with the front man they have needed for 3 to 4 years? Again, your guess is as good as mine. Just for the laugh, your guess is as good as mine. First of all, in this particular case, in the case of Christian Norgaard and Kepa Arrizabalaga, they've shown one intent. They've acted really quick. Yes, it's for modest fees, and one could argue that these transfers have been less complicated as opposed to what their top targets would be in negotiating for them. But again, priorities. When you go to the market and your priority is to buy food, just because fruits are going for a cheaper price, doesn't mean that you shift your priorities. And that's the only way I can analyze that, just for the laugh. Yeah, so you're right to question that, and a lot of Arsenal fans have questioned that. For goodness sake, it is not the priority. Do we need to replace Thomas Partey? Do we need to replace Jorginho? Most obviously, yes, but that's not the priority. Let's not forget where our priorities are, and it is a striker. But also, to Arsenal's credit, it's good that they've gotten these places covered quite early on, in the backup goalkeeper, in now a backup midfielders. But Christian Norgaard, is he the kind of a profile player for Arsenal? Does he fit that? Is he an Arsenal profile player? Because it's one thing to shine at a team like Brentford, and it's a whole other thing to shine at a team like Arsenal or Manchester United. And those are some of the questions that are going to come for Matthias Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo, should he complete his move, because the pressure that comes with playing for those teams is often a notch higher, is often different. Now, the advantage for Christian Norgaard is that this doesn't rest entirely upon him, because he's coming in as a squad player, as a Jorginho replacement in terms of squad profile. That kind of player that you call upon when your primary player in that role is absent or is having tired legs. But let's not forget, Martin Zubimendi is going to be new to the Premier League. It could take him a bit of time for him to adapt to the Premier League, just pretty much like Mikel Merino. And it took him a while, and I'm not sure he's yet to fit in really well in that role where he's supposed to play at left 8 midfield. But let's wait and see. Just for the laugh, you say he will do a job for Arsenal when called upon. He will not be called upon often. I do not feel. Basically, that's the feeling. What we essentially saw of Jorginho, that when the primary when Martin Zubimendi is out and they do not want to pull Declan Rice back to play at the center of midfield, then Christian Norgaard comes in. When Martin Zubimendi has those tired legs and you need to see out a game, you call on Christian Norgaard. But also, for purposes of player rotation, they do need that kind of player. The good thing for this particular signing is the fact that he is Premier League proven. Playing for Arsenal may be a different thing, but at least being Premier League proven gives him a good chance, you know. And his numbers are not really bad. 122 appearances in 4 seasons. That's an average of at least 30 Premier League games. Now, I often say, if Arsenal, unfortunately, were to lose Martin Zubimendi to injury, is Christian Norgaard going to be the player that they trust to play all those games for the length of an injury of that nature, of any nature? We wait to see. But suddenly, it's a view that has divided Arsenal fans. He is a hard tackler. He is a very, very best player. I think he's one of those that covered the most ground in the Premier League last season. So he still has the legs to run in him. And now apparently negotiations are ongoing over the length, over what length of contract do they hand him to see out this, to complete this transfer. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. He did come out to say that Arsenal, that Christian Norgaard has been authorized to undergo medical at Arsenal after a deal was agreed with Brentford. And next signing after, Kepa Arrizabalaga, and Martin Zubimendi were done. But we are yet to find out what the length of his contract is going to be in that regard. So it's that kind of decision that has really split the Arsenal fan base. I've seen a lot of them saying, not the player we want. And like Charles Watts, I wait to be proven wrong. Let's wait and see. But I'm sure Mikel Arteta and his team of analysts must have done a great deal of their homework to say, if we are losing Thomas Partey, then the best replacement is Christian Norgaard, because this hasn't been a question of we tried to sign Christian Norgaard, we failed, and then we went for a number 2 or a number 3 option in that kind of setting. It's definitely not been that. So that for me signals that first of all, it signals that Arsenal were really, really prepared for this kind of situation. It's one they had seen coming. But like I also said, at the start of the season, Arsenal's expectation was that they were not going to give Thomas Partey a new contract. But it was based on the performance for him last season and his overall availability that led to the situation of the club to say, let's renew his contract. So I think right from maybe start of the season, they must have already been thinking about options. Now, some Arsenal fans have come out to say maybe we needed to assess a longer term option. But a longer term option means that you bring a player like maybe Adam Wharton, Lucien Aguema, but maybe Arsenal not willing to make the financial outlay that it may cost them to bring in those kinds of players, which sends a signal to me why Arsenal spending small on backup goalkeeper and midfielder, that they really want to go big on a striker and on a left winger. The question is, why are Arsenal dragging their feet on those deals? Why are they dragging their feet? And reports say that Mikel Arteta wants a striker in before they fly out, I think, to Asia for their pre-season tour, which starts on July 19th. So, yes, they return back to London Colony early, but before they fly out, he would have wanted his striker to have joined. Anyways, let's move on to the transfer gossip and speculation. Liverpool have joined Manchester United and Arsenal in the race to sign Sporting Lisbon's 27-year-old. That's Victor Gyökeres. So apparently, according to Correo de Mana in Portuguese, are saying Liverpool have joined the race. Chelsea are edging closer to a deal to sign Borussia Dortmund and England forward. That's Jamie Gittens from the Bundesliga side. out for about 15 million pounds. Yes, Chelsea, this week they've had numerous conversations with Borussia Dortmund to try and seal that deal. Man United may accept bids of up to around 45 million pounds to secure a quick sale for 20-year-old Argentine winger Alejandro Garnacho. Remember, Chelsea Chelsea had interest. Napoli, apparently Arsenal. Although the player's attitude is still an issue, but for me, a player that is still under 20, that is still 20 years of age, I think you can, work that out. You can, do the homework on him. I do not think he's going to be the kind of troublesome player like Mario Balotelli. I do not think he's going to be an Eric Cantona. Those calamitas or, a Joe Barton. I do not think it's going to be that bad. So, anyways, then Newcastle are looking at the likes of PSV Eindhoven and Belgium winger John Bakayoko, that's the 22-year-old, and Borussia Dortmund attacker Karim Adeyemi, 23, if they are unsuccessful in their pursuit for Nottingham and Swedish wide man Anthony Elanga. I think Johan Bakayoko is a very, very good player, as well as Karim Adeyemi, very, very good players. Manchester United are struggling to sell Netherlands left back Tyler Malacia, 25 years of age, who helped PSV Eindhoven with the Eredivisie title. That's last season. You remember they won it at the expense of Ajax, while Sunderland have held talks with Nice over a deal for 25-year-old Poland goalkeeper Marcin Balka. Then Everton have started negotiations with La Liga club Villarreal over the signing of 22-year-old French forward Thierno Barry, and have not ruled out paying his £34 million release clause. Meanwhile, Manchester City have rejected a £6.5 million bid from Hoffenheim for 21-year-old England under 21 defender Calum Doyle. Then Everton are still hopeful of signing Kenny Tate on a free transfer, despite reports that Fulham have offered the 29-year-old Dutch right back a new contract. You remember his contract has run out, or is running out at Fulham, and so he's going to be a free agent. While Benfica have yet to receive an offer from Real Madrid after the La Liga giants were linked with the Spanish left back Alvaro Carreras, that's the 22-year-old who only joined the Lisbon side last year from Manchester United. That's according to Marca in Spain. So there you have it. That's the transfer gossip. That's the speculation making the rounds this morning. We will be back if there's any significant news, maybe at lunchtime at around 2 or 1:30, depending if there's any news, or else we will be back for our usual late night broadcasts. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure having you guys on the broadcast. Thank you so much just for the laugh. Thank you so much for Trust Ali. Thank you so much Zero Rikram. Thank you so much Sky Main channel. Thank you so much everybody else that has been part of this morning's conversation. Thank you so much, Peter Parker. You did chip in with us. Always a pleasure to have you guys around. Much appreciated for your dedication, love, and support. See you guys next time. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day and stay blessed. Bye-bye.